being a Thank you everybody for joining us in this DARPE webinar. Today we're going to be talking about how to tailor your CV so that you can secure your next contract and grant award. So just to start us off, I wanted to have a little chance for us to engage a little bit and talk about what are your first feelings when you are applying for a consultancy or a job. And so all I want you to do right now is go to menti.com and put in that code 7846325 and start telling me what you think of when applying for a consulting job or bid. I'll give you a couple of minutes to start filling that out. Just think about some of the things that you think about. What are some of your fears? What are some of the things that you've experienced? Just generally what first comes to mind when you are applying. It doesn't have to be super complicated, just okay, references, that's a good one. Experience, am I qualified enough? Anxious, that's a really common feeling. All right, I think these are some of the good ones that we can think about, and we'll discuss all of these different things as we're going through this PowerPoint. But essentially, you are right. When you are applying for a consultancy job or bid, it's really important that you start convincing the person that you are applying to that you have the right experience and that you are qualified enough to take on this job. Just as a request, can everybody make sure that they're muted? So that we can hear everybody quite well. Yeah, country, language is now currently a very important thing when you are applying for a job. That's part of the experience. So these are some of the most common themes. I see a couple more people adding in competition, afraid. I'm so sorry that you guys have fear, but hopefully after this presentation, you'll feel a little bit more confident as you approach this consultancy or job or bid. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, why do you need to customize or tailor your CV? And there are a couple of reasons why you shouldn't be putting in just your run-of-the-mill standard master email. And that's because the proposed key personnel or the CVs are usually given a high evaluation score in any bid evaluation. And your CV is meant to be a selling or marketing document. And so you should constantly use it to position and differentiate yourself, i.e. by answering the question, why are you different? And you can do this by really just making small changes in the language and structure of your CV. That can automatically grab the attention of the recruiter and make a big difference in your chances. But because recruiters are often seeing CVs, like 100 CVs in a day, you need to make sure that your CV grabs the attention of the recruiter within that first 6 seconds. You also need to be aware that a lot of these organizations use artificial intelligence to conduct initial screening for applicants. And so you need to customize your CV to fit the job description so that you are past that initial screening. And that often happens by including certain keywords. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward in the webinar. We have a second question that will come up for you guys here. Is that, what do you think recruiters look for in a resume? That's just another question for you to think about. And again, it's menti.com and you use the same code. Experience in the same field, absolutely. Needed skills and experience. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Oftentimes they are looking for somebody who has experience in the field from before, because this person will be more fitted for the job. Exactly. Somebody who's a good fit, references and qualifications. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. Your achievements and soft skills. We'll actually talk about soft skills as well in a minute. Um, yeah, so these are some really great things that you guys are putting in companies that they've worked for. Absolutely. These are really good answers. And they're all important for when you're tailoring your CV. And we'll talk a little bit more about each one as we move forward. Now, you're absolutely right. The recruiters oftentimes have a certain perspective that they're going into when they're evaluating your CV. And the most important question that they're asking is, does this candidate have what it takes to do the job? Will this candidate fit in? Are they the best candidate for this position? And when they go through this process of their thinking, it leads to better hires as a result. And it's a more effective and productive project or workplace. And so they often look for somebody who has already like done this position before, somebody who, fits the bill more or less. As a candidate, you need to think about certain things for yourself as well. Do you want this job? Can you actually do the job? And does this job offer you the opportunities you want in advancement or experience? Because oftentimes candidates are applying for positions that might not fit in their overall career path. And so you really need to make sure that you are choosing positions that are better for your career growth and your career satisfaction. That way you can actually last in a job. So, something that you should really keep in mind is that you should only apply for jobs that you are actually suited for. Check that you match the skills and experience for the criteria at least by 80%. If you don't meet 80% of the criteria, your chances for landing this position are not very high. And so you need to make sure that you actually fit the bill. So, what does tailoring your CV actually look like? For us, the first step that you need to do is you need to actually research your employer. You need to look for the trends in how they look for the trends in how they speak, for their methodologies, their activities, what vocabulary do they use to describe themselves. You need to know their values. And so, if, for example, you're looking to work at the World Bank, you should be aware that the World Bank values economic growth, for example. You need to be aware that the language that they use is very quantitative in nature. And so when you put that into perspective, you need to make sure that your CV mirrors that same energy and that same vibe. And actually, by joining DARPE, you could actually benefit from that a lot because we have a full roster of all of the RFPs that the World Bank has released in the past. And so these are really good documents for you to use to kind of get a gauge of what this organization's methodology and activities are like. So here, for example, you see that the supporting their Ministry of Economy and Planning and strengthening and capacities of the investment task force. This is a really good example of their use for economic language and quantitative work. Building capacity for healthcare quality leaders. Again, it's all about capacity building. So we're thinking more like, their methodologies are going to be really led on creating leaders in the field. And so you're going to want to mirror that in your own CV. Some things that you should look for is not just their RFPs, but you should check out their website. If you see that the website looks clean and neat, then you should also mirror that in your CV. If their website looks more creative and artsy, then you should do that as well in your CV, especially if you're applying for a design position, for example. Your CV is essentially your chance to show off your skills. Um, and so, what it takes to have a good CV is more or less broken up into these 6 points. The first point is that it needs to be well structured, and I promise that we're not going to stay on this slide for long, but basically we'll elaborate on what each of these points means in a minute. But it needs to be well structured. It needs to be short and easy to read. It needs to be skimmable. It needs to be using of keywords and buzz terms from the RFP that you are actually getting the key personnel from. You need to use differentiating messages and you need to paint a picture. Now, what does that actually mean? Now, in terms of having your CV being well structured, you need to have unique sections. This is important because a lot of the times people just assume that the standard is what you need to go with. And the standard is that you need to go with a reverse chronological order, meaning that the job that you did last or the current position that you're in, followed by the one that you had before that, and then the one you had before that. And while this standard format might look good for somebody who's had a very well structured and like straightforward career path, that might be the way to go. But if you're somebody who's had a more diverging pathway where you have experience in different skill sets, or example, if you're a freelancer or a consultant, you might have different types of experience. And so your career path might not be so direct. And so I would recommend that if you are doing part-time consultancies, that you break up your CV into sections by saying things like, these are all my design experiences. And these are all my sales experiences. These are all the experiences I've had working on gender as a gender specialist. And by breaking it up that way, you make it look more like your CV is telling a story of where you've been, what kind of experience you have, and it breaks up your CV in a way that makes more sense. Don't be afraid to break away from the standard format if it doesn't fit with what with your CV pathway and if it doesn't illustrate your story better. Just make sure that you're picking the format that represents you the best. We're going back to mentee, and this is our last question, I promise. But so the question is, here it comes. It's question one. It's part of a quiz, so you got to be fast in answering this one. Answer fast to get more points. How long should an ideal CV be? Absolutely. It looks like most of you are aware that it should be within the 500 to 600 words range. Anything under 500 words is, I mean, that could work if you are somebody who is still early on in your career path. But for most people, it's going to be between 500 and 600 words. Um, as for the people who are over 600 words, I think that mostly goes for somebody who's way later in their career path. But if you are generally still, midway through your career path, don't exceed the 600-word limit. Nobody's going to be reading a long CV because most things need to be skimmable in nature. Um, so your CV must be short and skimmable. Don't put in blocks of text. Blocks of text tend to be a really big turnoff for recruiters. And so try to strive for short bullet points that show off your skills and make sure that it is completely easy to read. Now, let's talk about keywords. Now, the average job description includes 43 keywords, but the average applicant only includes 51% of those keywords in their application. Now, that, of course, is not the greatest number. And it's to show you that sometimes if you don't put in those keywords, you might be less likely to be contacted for that job. And then the next question that rightly comes after is, well, how do I know what these right keywords are? And the answer for you is to use the right keywords. You're not just supposed to be putting in all the buzzwords. Don't use cliches, but use the keywords that rightly fit the job description. You can copy and paste job descriptions directly into free word cloud websites and use the target for the most important keywords. You've got Monkey Learn is a good one, and wordcloud.com is really good. I can show you how it works. Wordcloud. Bear with me one moment. Oh, I don't think I clicked the same one. Let me check out Monkey Learn. think this is the right one. Yeah, free word cloud generator. Use for free. And say we're actually hiring right now. And so if you're interested in joining our team, you should check us out. We're looking for somebody in the M&E sector. So if you're somebody who has that skill set, we'd be happy to have you on board. Let's say here is, bear with me one moment. Okay, perhaps we'll come back to that as my internet is not the most reliable at the moment, but you get the picture. You essentially grab the entire text of the job description. Like here, you can copy and paste this into the free crowd generator. It's also not working, but yeah, you paste it into there and it'll start showing you a cloud of all the keywords, and you can start picking out the most important ones and including them into your CV. Oh, what has happened here? Sorry, it seems I'm experiencing some tech difficulties. Right, here we go. Yeah, so that's what it means for you to include your right keywords. And when you're thinking about keywords, you need to start including them in a way that makes sense. For example, if you're applying for a proposal coordinator position, you need to make sure you're putting in that keyword proposal coordinator. So if you're writing in participated in business development process, including recruiting and submission of bids to donor agencies and project management, you haven't really included this proposal coordinator, even though these are exactly the tasks that you would be doing as a proposal coordinator. Instead, try writing it as a key part of business development team with responsibilities for proposal coordination of USAID projects. Not only did you include proposal coordination in your as a keyword, you've also put in USAID projects as a more specific understanding of where you're using your keywords. And that automatically increases your likelihood of passing the initial screening because you've linked your CV directly to the position. Um, Use differentiating messages. You need to say, I accomplished this thing as measured by Y by doing Z. And what do I mean by that? You need to be very specific. Um, Details should be quantitative, relevant, and measurable. Instead of saying you have extensive experience or your expertise, say you have 9 years of traffic modeling experience. Instead of saying you've worked on many or a large number of projects, say I've worked on 25 bridge projects. Instead of saying a variety, list the actual projects you've worked on. Don't say that you're highly qualified because that's a cliche and a buzzword that you don't want to hear. Prove it by listing all of your key qualifications. For example, for a content marketing manager, here's what you accomplished. You drove 22,500 organic signups to your monthly newsletter, and you did this by Y. The Y is by A/B testing content layout and collaborating with co-marketing partners, as represented by Z, which is representing a 43% in quarter on quarter increase. And so this is your differentiating message, and it's also very specific and quantifiable. And the reason you want to make sure you're using these quantifiable metrics is that you are able to let the recruiter kind of put a number on your value, and they can measure you in a more accurate way. But if you're just saying I worked on newsletters, that is not very quantifiable. But if you say, I made the newsletters so much more popular and drove website visits by 25%, that's a quantifiable measure. And that actually gives you a bigger chance of landing that position. Your resume should seek to have action verbs. And so through these active verbs, you stress your accomplishments with confidence versus process. And what I mean by that is that instead of saying like I authored these three resumes or I led a webinar, I can say that I managed and created this webinar. And it says a lot more than just by saying, completed 3 webinars in a month. These actually give you an action verb to lead by. So now it comes to the part where you need to tailor your CV to tell a story. The first thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to have your first line be your elevator pitch. This is the first line that people will see in your CV, and it needs to target the client or the employer's needs. Your summary or elevator pitch, it really sets the tone for your CV. And the key is to start off with something that is immediately relevant to the job you're applying for. And so if you are looking for that proposal coordinator job that I just told you about, then you need to say that you have 5 years experience working in business development and proposal coordination. It doesn't need to be longer than that. All that it needs to be is like 2 to 3 sentences long, and just directly linked to the position. The paragraph following that should be any description of positions that you've held. And it should be a brief introduction stating to the evaluator what they need to know. It's a detailed summary and it should include the geography of the experience, who the employer was or the funding agency you worked with, the different roles you applied, the type of deliverables, delivery methods, dollar values are also really good to include, and any new technology approaches that you integrated into the system. The very last thing that you should include is a paragraph listing the degrees you've earned, the certificates you've undertaken or completed. So here we're looking at a very good example of what it means to list your key qualifications. You need to show the projects that you've worked on in a similar role that's required by the RFP. You don't have to put in every single position you've held in the past. Only include the positions that are actually relevant to this RFP. Remember, the recruiter is going to be skimming your CV, and so you need to attract their attention quickly by putting in the most relevant experience at the very top of your qualification. Each project should have a bulleted summary statement of projects. Tie the role on the project to the respective role in the proposal or the job that you are applying to. As of course, you need to include the specifics. So for example, here we have this person was a lead project designer. They included their number of projects that they've worked on and that they've conducted 4 options to discuss early conceptual directions. And so here we're seeing that that specificity and not just general explanations of what this person does on a day-to-day. Sorry about that. And the last thing that you could do is that you need to make sure that you are increasing your visibility. If you are somebody who's looking to be seen more by international donor agencies, you can actually create your profile at DARPE for free to be contacted for different contract opportunities by creating your profile there. And it'll be visible for hundreds of organizations that work within the development aid sector. And it is a free process. All you got to do is go to darpe.me, click on create profile, and you'll be able to do that very easily. That's everything I had for you for today. Let me see if I can get the word cloud generator for you. Oh, it still seems like it's not working. But that's everything I had for you for today. But we can open up the floor now for questions.
Yeah, hi Noor. This is Ala Shaheen. I am working with Noor. Hi everyone, and welcome on board. Thank you, Noor, for the for the very interesting information that you have shared on how to write a better and effective CV, and more or less how to tailor each CV to the job requirements that people are applying for. So it's usually we are tailoring our CV so it can talk to the readers of the evaluators so that they can see what they want to see. And as well as we were in the proposal writing industry with the non-governmental organizations, development consulting firms, the personnel section is a very important part of the proposal. And usually there is, I'll have my screen as well. Usually I will have my video, and usually these are scoring grades are high for the personnel section. And that's why proposal writers, proposal developers, and usually there's a recruiting specialist in the team who is doing the proposal. So they start recruiting as early, and they start tailoring the CV of the consultants to match with the requirements of the RFP. So when the 1 to 3 pages maximum CV is written for each key personnel and is included in the proposal, it gets more higher grade and higher scoring. So this is what is tailoring CV is important. And it's used for both for people, recruiters in the proposal team, or for any development consultant who is looking for to apply for a job. So you can't every time use the same CV. This is the whole theory behind it, unless you have a very general CV that you have. But still, tailoring CVs is a very important and tricky and smart move to be able to attract, to secure and land a job, and not only securing and landing any job, but rewarding as well, because people the recruiters will value that much the CV that you are writing. And this is the way that you start with negotiating and being able to secure these good and rewarding jobs. Thank you, Noor. So we have opened, Noor, you are opening the floor for questions now. That's right? Noor?
Yep, absolutely. We're now
Okay.
open for questions. If you want to ask anything about your own CV or how to tailor it, we're now available for that. If you'd like, you can just raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you can drop your question into the chat. We've got 2 people with raised hands. Hassan, you can go first.
Hi, Noor. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I work as a projects manager in one organization. It's based in Turkey, and we are working international projects. Actually, our organization experience is a little bit different from the common organizations because we are working like in the middle. We are not implementing and we are not giving funds. We are like a consultancy, basically. So my experience is to monitor and to evaluate the proposals that our implementers do. And as well, we give these proposals to the fund, to the donors to get their fund. So I'm not implementing, I'm not giving fund, basically. That's my work of evaluating and auditing and things like this. My CV will be like tremendous numbers. I'm talking about is very huge. The number of projects is very, very high. I'm not engaged in the daily basis operations. So while I was making my CV for the roles I'm applying for, I'm hesitating a lot because I think this will be like a bad impression because I give a lot of numbers, but my role in these numbers are what I told you.
Right.
Can I fit my CV in somehow, not to show off like I am really managing multi-million projects on my own? That's not true. I'm just part of the process. How can I show this in my CV with to be a great fit for my role when I'm applying for?
So I would strongly recommend that, for example, you're saying you're working as part of a team, correct?
Yeah, part of a team, of course.
Okay. So for starters, you're working as part of a team, then you can use a soft skill here and say that you have been collaborating within a team. By starting with using the word collaborated with a team, that already shows that you are a team player, and it shows that you are able to coordinate with other people in a team. And so you're not just saying, how many projects you've worked on, you're also showing off your soft skills. And second of all, you can start by saying like consulting experience on, CV evaluation or recruitment evaluation as like your headline. And then underneath say collaborated with a team of, recruitment professionals on multi-million dollar projects, including X, Y, and Z. Like you don't have to list out every single one, but if you list a couple of them and say these are the dollar amounts of some of these projects, that should be sufficient. You're assuming that you pass the initial screening, you're going to be interviewed. And so when you're interviewed, that's a good place for you to bring out even more stuff than your CV. Your CV is kind of it's an introduction to your position. It's not meant to be a full on description of everything that you've ever done under the sun. It's at most 1 to 3 pages is your maximum. And so don't feel the need to include every single project. You should be thinking about how to put in your best foot forward, your best impression. And I would even say that, like, instead of putting all of the projects you've worked on, pick out the most relevant ones for the position, and pick out the ones that are the most high profile. So for example, if I'm trying to apply for something that's for the USAID, I would strongly recommend putting in any project that you have worked on that was funded by the USAID before, because they'll be familiar with it, and it'll increase your familiarity with their project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense a lot. That's gonna me change my CV a lot. Actually, do you offer the possibility of reviewing CVs, giving advices on personal basis, paid stuff?
Unfortunately, we don't do that. We
Okay.
currently only offer you the availability of putting your CV on our website. So once you've created your CV, you're ready for work. All you got to do is go and create a profile. We've dropped the link in the chat. And once you put it in, you will be able to select the services you provide and what sectors you've worked before. And so people will be able to contact you for your services.
We actually call it smart CV or smart profile, in which you just have, you can create it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes maximum, with the major part, just filling in your key qualification, which is your positioning statement, in which you provide who you are and what you are doing and what kind of capacity, competency. This key qualification indicates your reliability and competency. And then you just highlight check boxes, the sectors, the subsectors, and the services and sub-services you are providing, as well as with the name of the donor agencies, international organizations you have worked for, or as you have worked for as a consultant, as an employee. Then there will be then you will have a post on our website. Then our DARPE members and they can easily go to the personal section, and hopefully you'll be more visible. Accordingly, you'll be more visible, and hopefully you will be more contacted or contracted. The second thing that we are now started to doing it starting this month, and then from this month, is those people who created their CVs and created their profiles at DARPE, we will include their include their profiles in our newsletter. And here is what we call broadcasting your CV. And our newsletter reaches about 50,000 of subscribers who subscribe to DARPE, as well as on the social media. So you will be reached. So your name will be there, and on the desk of the international organizations, donor agencies who may not connect and contact you. So this is a broadcasting service, free of charge, for the ones who it's only once. We do it only once for once they create their profiles at DARPE.
Okay. We We have a couple of questions in the chat, and I'll read them out. We've got, well, actually, I think Safa had asked her question first, so I'm gonna ask you to unmute, and then we will take a couple more questions.
Okay, hello. My question is, if you have, from your experience, something tailored for local consultancies or job application versus international or multinational organization.
What does this mean, Safa?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, because I saw in the chat, for example, when there was the word count for CV, someone wrote that that doesn't work in the Middle East. It's more relevant to the EU, for example. So I mean, do you have further comment from your experience, something that's more relevant for international context, or?
Yeah, actually, this question has written by Mahdi Flavo. He's with us now. And Mahdi, can you answer your comment? You said in the European Union or the EU based that this is the counting of words is working there, but for the MENA region, counting of words is not working, and the focus will be on the. Could you add something, Mahdi, here?
I actually would like to add another point to that. It's not just in the EU. Counting of the words is also for USAID and other organizations that are international. When you think about MENA region, if you're looking at like smaller sized organizations, sure, they might not do word count, but it's not about word count as like the organization has a specific number of words for you. I'm saying you should think of word count because you should position yourself within these words because you're not going to be read beyond these words.
Yeah,
but
Mahdi,
Mahdi, feel free to add your input.
Mahdi, do you have? Yeah.
Can you hear me? Testing.
Yes, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Hi. Good evening, everyone, or good morning. First, I would like to say that the mentality, the expectations, one of the most important words have been repeated over here is how to position yourself. Based on how do you position yourself, you do the calculations. If the person you are addressing is in a position to have a criteria of selection, you apply the criteria they want, demand, and usually it's online. But in the Middle East and the MENA region, it's more about the flow of information, the cover letter, how do you position yourself to where you are heading. So you have to take into consideration if you are applying for a profitable or non-profitable organization. It all depends on the wording. How do you position yourself and what value added do you add to this institution by just applying for this position? So I would say it's easy to do the resume because it's a serial of actions you have achieved, but it's more important to give attention to the cover letter that comes to complement the resume, and it positions the person in a zoom to know and realize and acknowledge exactly to what you are heading. That's why when I mentioned less than 500 words, people don't like to read. So make sure that the title, the subject, that you represent yourself, make it zoom. I'm looking for a full-time job. I'm expertise in that domain. Based on this highlighted, very well sculptured attention to the heading, to the title, you display like one small paragraph. Usually we in academia use it as bio that summarizes exactly what is your best expertise. So your best expertise best to be showcased as a bio with less than 250 words because people don't really read. People, they don't have time to read. So every 6 months, if you are expertise in your domain, you need from time to time to refresh this bio and make sure that you always customize it, personalize it, zoom it to the people you are addressing. There's nothing called one shoe fits all. You need to do the research, do the exercise, get to know the people you are addressing, take few keywords, do some kind of research basis skills, just get to know the people behind the screen. Still, add humanity and humanization to your paperwork. That's the best tip that I can share with you. And as well, I shared with the number of audience here, the ones that still don't know how to script a resume, and for them this dialogue is a little bit taboo. There's a link that I shared with you on the chat box. Please have a look. It's a basic one-to-one how to mentally be prepared to write a proper cover letter and basic resume. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahdi. Thank you, Mahdi, very much. It's really fruitful to hear from you. This is interesting, and Yeah, and I understand. I agree with you that this is what you call the new word nowadays is to positioning yourself. And what positioning mean that you need to strengthen يعني بالعربي positioning is يعني to stand out of the crowd and why the recruiters would like to recruit you and why they want to select you. And one of the slides that Noor has displayed is the two perspectives of the recruiter with the applier, the applicants. And the recruiters are looking for people that great ones. Accordingly, they can be productive and they can do the job for them. Whereas the applicant is looking for a better job, a better career advancing, as well as a place to work with. So this kind of different perspectives is there, and while you are doing your CV, as Mahdi said, it's not, you don't have to, you have to put in your mind the other side. So it's not only about I, but you think what kind of things you will add value to the other side who's paying at the end of the day and who's investing either in a proposal award or contract award or investing in getting people in to pay the salaries, and accordingly they are looking for something as an outcome, as an impact that someone is going to bring into the job. Noor, is your
We have a couple of other questions in the chat. I'm going to read them out and then we can answer some of them in bulk. We've got from Mustafa, I have 17 years of corporate experience in large FMCGs, mainly in manufacturing, engineering, and conservation supply chain projects. Now I want to move to development domain. So consider me a fresh grad with 17 years of experience. What do you advise me to do to exposed opportunities? We also have from Salwa, what if I have a lot of experience and I want to reflect them in my CV at the time? I will not be able to do so in a short CV containing maximum three pages. We've got another question from.
Okay, can we get one by one, or
I'll take the last question and then we can take them all. We got Wafia is asking, can you give us a model example of a CV structure that we can follow? Like, what are the main headings to include so we don't miss any pieces of info in the CV? Yeah, I think that's.
Wafia, you can speak out if you want. Wafia, is there? Wafia.
Hi, Dr. Ali. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? It's a good chance to be together, to see you here.
Yes,
go ahead.
Same here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, because for me, I still use the structure of the fresh graduate with some tweaking. So what I heard from Noor, and thank you so much for the very informative session, is that I write it in the form of a story, and I think this would be more interesting, but I can't picture this. How will the structure be?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of structure, what I meant by like moving away from the traditional is by putting in headings based on the type of experience that you've done. So especially with people who have had lots of consulting experience. So say you've got, you did multiple projects as a gender expert, but you did them over several different years. You did in 2016, you were a gender expert for UNICEF. And then in 2014, you were a gender expert for Plan International. You could put those two underneath each other. And then instead of putting them chronologically, if that makes sense. And then you could put a different section underneath that with your expertise as a M&E professional and put them in under that in that way. And that way it's a more, it flows better that way. And you would also need to make sure that when you're applying for this organization's position, you are putting in the most relevant positions at the top. And so if you're applying for a gender specialist position, obviously put the gender work at the top and then the male positions at the bottom. Lead with what is most relevant to the position. I don't think there's any one format that'll work for every single person or one format that'll work for every single job. You need to make sure that you are fitting your CV to the bill. Like, I strongly recommend that you move up. Like, I think the best way for you to do this is create a master CV and put in your master CV everything you've ever done under the sun. And then have within every application that you're about to do, you're about to apply for a specific job, you can then copy paste from your master CV into this tailored one. These are the things that actually apply to this position. I know it means that you're going to have to do a little bit more work, but in the long term, it'll actually make your chances for landing that position better. And I think the best thing.
Noor, I can share a template of a CV that is used by so many international consulting firms, in which you can make your CV small, concise, as well as story to tell. As Noor, I'm sharing the screen. Do you see it now, Wafia?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and this one, for instance, you know, you understand, as Mahdi said, even there's a lot of templates that you can use around in the corner that to different CVs. There's a lot. Even the Word document itself has so templates for CVs. So this is one of the story to tell CV, in which in the right column here is the first column. Is the page is divided into two columns. The column to the left, there's your professional history. For instance, EECOM, lead consultant from to, and accordingly to the different roles, you put the name of the organization, the role, and the duration, which you are, that means from to. So in this part, if I can annotate this one minute, in this part of the 1 minute, please. And this part of the CV, you are doing it's like a story to tell. It's like it's very small, but telling you from once you graduated until now where you have been working and your role. And then underneath that you will have what you call the academic training that you have. So this is your master degree, your PhD, or your bachelor degree. That's it. And then on the right side here is what, again, you start telling your story. The summary, which is the key qualification. The bio, as Mahdi has mentioned, this is the summary of the summary. It's everything about you. And then you start doing about your experience. You are enlarging your, expanding your summary. And then you start doing only the projects that relate to that assignment. So there is no need for, as you said, people doesn't read CVs. They hate to read, and long CVs are very boring. So you start putting only the projects that are related to that specific program you are applying for as a consultancy assignment. If you take, for instance, about women economic empowerment, and you are an evaluator, so you put only the projects that in women economic empowerment, and you having the role of monitoring and evaluation, like this PCT Columbia Valley transmission, Panel Hinton water treatment plant upgrade, and so on. This will make you two pages CV, but it's a story to tell actually. And the issue is the smaller the CV you are, the more difficult. But this means that, but no one writes smaller CV unless he digests his experience and his life and what he's doing, and can categorize his life into big titles and big hits, hit titles, because he hit his headlines because he digests doing, he knows what he's doing, he knows his purpose. At the same time, he knows the other side that he is applying or she is applying for. It's the only way someone can make a digestible 2-page CV. So a smaller CV, more concise, is an indicator of that someone knows what he's doing. The larger CV, 13 pages, 14 pages, is someone like fish in the water, just everywhere. He's everywhere. The capability to concise, it is something important. And how can we concise? More understanding. Maybe you need to develop a graphical design where you have been and what you have done and so on a wall, so you can have like this kind of storyboarding, and then you start writing your CV accordingly. And then once you're writing a CV, it will be a piece of art actually. People will like to read it. Hopefully this will have answered.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Noor? The floor is...
Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap it up for today? Feel free to raise your hand or drop your question in the chat.
Again, you can easily connect with us at info@darbe.me or just to create your profile. We will have a look at your CV and to make sure that your CV matches the requirements, which is a 5 years plus of experience in development and have worked in the Middle East, because our database is already selected and filtered database. So that you have to be in the MENA region and you have to be working in the development. One question for the Mustafa, who said that I am working in the fast-moving consumer goods and would like to go development, and how can I start enter this market? It's a market, it's an industry similar to the food manufacturing and consumer goods is an industry, cars industry, and development industry. And this industry attracts a lot of money, of billions of dollars in the Middle East, to invest in socio-economic infrastructure in all development, sustainable development goals. So in order to be part of that study, that industry is to start with maybe volunteer work with the non-governmental organizations here and there to understand how development works, and maybe to start receiving newsletters and looking for tenders and grants and opportunities, so you can look at them and you can read these RFPs, requests for proposals, requests for applications, increasing and expanding your knowledge and horizon about development aid industry, what kind of sectors, how they're doing, the methodologies, the implementation mechanisms applied for the delivery of these projects. You know, each industry has its own vocabulary, So for instance, our industry's outcomes, impact, value for money is part of such vocabulary. So this is the only way, and maybe to move in a consulting firm, development consulting firm, and you start doing, maybe you can start writing proposals if you, or you start delivering training for non-governmental organizations on how to market themselves, or for development consulting firms, how to position themselves. This would be a merge between your business development experience and the business sector and the development aid. And this is, or how to make trusted partnerships. Maybe this kind of areas that enable you to enter the development aid market. Thank you.
Okay, so that's everything. Basically, we're going to be sending out the recording for this session via email for everybody who registered, and it'll also be posted on our website. And so feel free to have a look at that. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next DARPE webinar.
Great. Thank you from Darbe. Good morning to everyone.